is your one and only spoiler warning. If you haven't watched this week's episode of Mobile Suit Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans, go ahead and do that now before watching the rest of this review. Because this week's episode goes down in the grand fashion of Gundam anime series by killing off some beloved characters. Although shockingly, the body count is surprisingly low. So if the second season of Iron-Blooded Orphans wasn't making you hate Eok before, you're absolutely going to loathe him in this week's episode, as he leads the Aryanhod fleet going up against the Turbines and basically planning to wipe them all out. What they did not expect is that the Turbines were going to fight back, and they were going to have some help from Tekkadan as well. Last week's episode basically put up a big death flag for the Turbines. I had a feeling that Naze and maybe even Amita was going to be killed, and that definitely happened in this episode. It was still pretty impactful, though. I think they had a really great death scene, and frankly, the lead-up to it was just awesome. The only thing that bothers me is I don't know if Eok was actually killed in this episode, because you see, at the very end, when all of the drama is at its absolute height, and Amida has been destroyed by one of those giant freaking spear, bow and arrow weapons, the whatever slice, whatever the hell they're called, right after that, you have Naze Turbine, who's in the Hammerhead ship, and it seems like he's basically just gonna ram right into Eok's ship. And he does manage to hit it, but it, like, deflects off, and he ends up flying into this other Aryanhod ship and just blowing it up. And they don't let you know if Eok has actually been defeated or if he's dead, and if he's not, man, I am still just waiting for his ultimate comeuppance. Much of the drama of this episode comes from the fact that neither Teiwaz nor Tekkadan can really help out the Turbines in this situation. Otherwise, they're just going to get dragged down into the pits of hell by Gjallarhorn. But that's still not going to stop Tekkadan entirely. You have the team of Akihiro, Shino, and Ride who decide to go in and help out the Turbines themselves, and this leads to some of the best action of the episode, some of which actually left me squealing like a friggin' schoolgirl. When Akihiro came in to save Laughter, it was a triumphant moment. Ride in his brand new version of the Ryusei Go is just awesome. This is one of the most kick-ass kid characters I think I've seen in any Gundam anime. And I think Shino speaks for himself, continuing to pilot the Gundam Flauros and making it look oh so badass. I especially love that the character of Julieta got some screen time in this episode as well, piloting some sort of brand new friggin' Gjallarhorn mobile suit, which looks really cool, and she gets to have an awesome battle with Amita in her signature mobile suit as well, which is a surprisingly hard-hitting fight. At first, it almost seems like Julieta might have the upper hand, but that's only because she caught her off guard. Right after that, Amita just makes her look like a frickin' punk throughout most of the episode, deflecting all of her fancy attacks. Like, she has this brand new thing on her mobile suit, which kind of reminds me of the Gundam Epion from Gundam Wing, where she has, like, this giant spear, which transforms into a giant whip. And because this is a Gundam anime series, the characters have to discuss philosophy while they fight. And Amita's view on the fact that she's not entirely dependent on Naze, and she has aspirations of her own to shine brilliantly, as she says, is why she's so much more competent in battle when compared to Julieta, who basically has to learn that the hard way in this episode. Especially, I loved seeing her crushing defeat when she was so convinced she was gonna win, but when Amita was destroyed by those massive weapons, she felt a sense of relief, and she felt really bad for feeling that. It's just amazing how they're developing even just the smaller side characters in this series. And I have to say, the deaths of both Naze and Amita were very hard-hitting. You could definitely see it on the characters' faces. Just watching Laughter cry was hard to watch. Everybody was at a complete breaking point, but I think it was that final scene with Orga in his office where he's just sitting there, his head buried in his hands, and then there's just a single tear on the desk, and the only thing he can say is, bro. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Iron-Blooded Orphans? One of the most intense battles of the entire series, to say the least. Lots of great mobile suit action and lots of disturbing death. I do have to admit, though, I did say that the body count is low, but a lot of different members of the Turbines get destroyed, but I felt no attachment to them because we really didn't get to spend that much time with those characters. But it was still really messed up how the Aryanhad fleet and Eok, who was basically making this big command, whenever they tried to send out, like, an agreement to say, hey, we're just gonna surrender, he just ignored it entirely. They just wanted to wipe them out. He's basically convinced at this point that in order to basically get on Rustal's good graces, he's gonna have to act like a dick. And that's why it was so annoying that he wasn't finished off when Naze actually slammed into him. I mean, there is a small chance that he actually is going to be killed and they're just waiting to reveal that in the next episode. I thought that was kind of like the big plan by Amita when, like, before she basically was killed, she, like, fired this shot which was right at the bridge, which completely destroyed their vision. It was all obstructed, and that would have been the perfect opportunity for Naze to come in and just ram some shit. But it deflected off and it hit another one. But still, they're doing a great job of making you hate the villain, which is something that I think is important. You know, in many ways, Eok is a great villain. It's just, he's so annoying and evil, but that's why you love to hate him so much. Not to mention the strategy he's been using in the last couple of episodes is just plain disturbing. Really, though, this episode just had some great moments in terms of the animation and all of the artwork and the action scenes. I think they speak for themselves, so that's definitely a reason to check out this episode. It just, you knew this episode was coming, though, especially because of last week's. There's one thing that Iron-Blooded Orphans does do a little sloppily, and that's give out big death flags. They need to be a little more spontaneous with it, I think, if they wanted to, you know, make you feel something a little bit more. That being said, I'm not going to lie. When Amita and Naze died in this episode, it hit me right here. It made me realize that I care about these characters, and I've been loving spending time with them, and I can't even imagine what things are going to be like when we actually get to, like, to the main members of Tekkadan, if any of them are potentially going to be, like, on the chopping block. This is a Gundam series, so there's a good chance of that happening, and I've grown attached to these guys. Like, Akihiro, Shino, and Ride carried this episode. They didn't need Mikazuki. It was awesome just to see these guys make their entrances and do a lot of cool things, and they all have such great personalities and growth. You become so accustomed to them. They're like your own brothers. That's the way it feels to me, and that's why I'm, like, afraid for what's going to happen to them, because we're getting this much closer to the end of the second season, which, man, can't wait to see how they're going to wrap that up. What I will say is, this episode was great. Just fantastic. Check it out, Gundam fans. Iron-Blooded Orphan fans, this is a must-watch. I'm going to give this episode a 5 out of 5. There were a few moments where I think maybe it was just a little too overdramatic, but for the most part, that's just the way they do things in Gundam, and that's the type of stuff that I love from the series. So, check it out, guys. If any of you did watch the episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comment section below. Did you see these deaths coming a mile away? Were you shocked by the death of Naze and Amida and the other characters in the episode? Did you have a favorite moment from this one? Did you not like this episode? What do you want to see from the rest of Iron-Blooded Orphans? Please tell me. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all of the latest Iron-Blooded Orphans reviews and Gundam videos. Make sure to leave me a comment or two. I would love to interact with you guys. And, of course, if you liked the video, please give it a like. I will see you guys next time. And, as always, stay dandy, baby.